right, we're on to the first plenary of the day, and we have two power women on stage to converse about the Unbound decade, India's pivotal role in shaping global inclusive narrative. The two who are going to be up, as soon as we have the chairs all in order, Sirisha Voruganti, CEO and MD, Lloyd's Technology Center, and Brenda Darden Wilkerson, President and CEO, AnitaB.org. Could I have both of you up here? Sirisha, ladies and gentlemen, is an executive with a clear vision for the future and has an extensive and varied work experience. She's well regarded for her experience in IT architecture, data engineering, and fintech innovation, having held senior positions in multiple global firms, from MasterCard to JP Morgan Chase. Talking to her in this 45-minute session is a visionary leader, powerful voice for equity, and one of the most influential advocates for inclusive technology in the world today, who will also be our moderator, Brenda Darden Wilkerson, President and CEO of AnitaB.org, a recognized champion of technology, education, and social justice. So it's over to you, Brenda and Sirisha, for this conversation.
Well, thank you so much.
Hey, Rennie, so good to see you again.
Well, welcome, everybody. Is everybody excited to be here today? Okay, I'm going to need you all to be a little less conservative. This is a celebration, and it's exciting to be able to look out and see so many amazing people here. It's exciting for me and for my team to be back here in India again with all of you. So thank you for being here, and I am excited to get to speak with someone who is a legend. She has been in so many places that we could all just wish to go. And I'm so excited to be able to hear her wisdom, her experiences, and I hope you'll take it all in and be able to plan on how you'll follow through. So thank you, Sirisha, for being here.
Thanks, Brenda, for having me here. And to all of you, I think as Shreya called out, this is truly a celebration. So a huge round of applause for everybody that's in the room, and I hope you have a great couple of days here at the Grace Hopper event.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I think I want us to talk about is the term Unbound. We're here, that's our theme for this year, and it's in a time when there's this huge disruption in tech, and we need to talk about what that means for us and our impact on the industry. So can you just kind of start by, I would love you to first start sharing some more of your background. I'm sure everybody here knows, but in case there's anybody that doesn't, can you share with us where you've been, what you've done, what you've been through, and just a little bit about your impact?
Sure. So well, as far as my education, I'm an engineer by education, and I joined the Ministry of Defense working on what's called the IGMDP program, for those of you that know this, right? The Early Missile Development Program that Dr. Kalam started many years ago, and there were 5 of those. So I was part of Prithvi, which is the surface-to-surface missile. I was part of both the 150-kilometer range missile and the 250-kilometer range missile, working primarily on the mission computing and the navigation systems, and then moved on to work on an anti-tank missile called Nag. And from then moved to, I worked on Tejas for a bit. Again, all of this was on the mission computing systems, right? So every time, well, the recent accident, barring the recent accident, but every time I see Tejas and hear a story, it's hugely, it's a moment of great pride. From there, moved to the private sector at some point in time. I know my mom went through a huge heartache when I was going through the move, but I really wanted to look at very, very large-scale integration on chips. So those were the days when you had things like the one-chip TV, which was done on a single chip, and we're really doing a lot of hardware, software, co-design, and things like that. So I moved to the private sector, and that journey has been amazing in terms of, I've moved sectors quite a bit, did a couple of startups, was an entrepreneur for a little bit. And at some point, I think being an entrepreneur, I don't know how many of you are entrepreneurs in the room, but well, if it's a successful startup, then great, and we invested again in a second one. The third one actually went south, where we were thinking of designing a low-cost phone for the India market, right? And well, Jio's done a great job with it, but we were trying to do that many, many years ago, and at that, I think we were way ahead of our time there, right? But then moved to the financial services sector at some point. So I was with MasterCard, where I was leading architecture and data for MasterCard. Which is really, and as well as technology services. So it was really providing services for all the 190 plus countries that MasterCard had an operation in, and then moved to JP Morgan, and now with Lloyd's. So yeah, it's been 34 years in the industry. So that's a long, long time, actually. I don't know how many of them were really born when I started my journey, but it's been, I feel like a dinosaur in any room I enter these days. So yeah.
So I think that gives us just a little bit of an idea that this is a woman who understands Unbound. And so give it, right? Go ahead and give her a big round of applause.
And for all of you, right? I mean, it's not always success. It's, you have a lot of failures. You have your moments of absolute low. I think many of us would have gone through that and said, enough's enough. I just am not able to manage. But then I think it's all about, and Unbound to me is all about resolve, resilience, coming right back again, and actually going through something that you absolutely love. And I'm sure all of you in this room love to be engineers, and that's what all of us are, really solving new problems. And I think that's what keeps us all going, right?
That's right. And I think it's important to just accentuate the fact that we learn from our failures.
Absolutely.
I think one of the things that we need to become unbound from is that we shouldn't fail. We don't learn unless we fail. And so, but getting back up and continuing, and from what we've learned on those failures is going to allow us to succeed ultimately and have the impact that the world needs from us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The bigger the fall, the bigger the rise.
That's right. That's right. That's the opportunity, at least. So I want to talk a little bit about India's tech ecosystem and just how influential and how impactful it is to the world. So given that momentum, where do you see India contributing most meaningfully to the global inclusion narrative?
So, well, just talking about GCCs, the ones that I belong to right now, is, we have 50% of the global GCCs located in India. That speaks for the talent that we have, right?
It does.
About 1.9 million engineers are employed in these GCCs, and the expectation is that we generate a revenue of about 100 billion by 2030. And that number of 1.9 million should be going to about 3.5 million by 2030 as well. So it's huge engineering talent that we have in this part of the world. And I think for every step function change the industry is going through, India comes back stronger with being able to solve for some of these problems. And we have, and I think you talk about any of these global entities, nobody is talking today about India as labor arbitrage or, low-cost services that you get, right? It's really about problem-solving abilities that you have. And whether it is, I was recently in a conversation with a team from Mercedes, and it's the same for all of us, I think, here, this is probably the only place where you actually get to see every part of the parent organization actually reflected and working on. And what does that do to our teams and people here is we're able to create not the benefits of scale in terms of, increased productivity, because all the teams are here and you're able to collaborate, cross-collaborate really well with teams. So I think the story for India has just about begun, right? This is probably, something that is here to stay and growing. And even in the AI age, I particularly don't feel very worried and scared about what this new revolution is going to do. And Brenda, we were just talking backstage about this whole, the AI thing, and is that a boon or a bane for people that are in the workforce, right? I think it is a boon of sorts, because when the computers first came in, everybody said, and people were actually worried, saying the computer is going to solve the problem better than myself, people are going to lose jobs. I think it's the same thing today with AI coming in, and we hear the same narrative again. So I think every time there's a step function change as far as technology is concerned, there's this, I think the same thematic that plays over and over again, is that going to impact jobs? But I would believe it'll probably, really open up a whole lot of new jobs. The same jobs may not exist, because maybe AI is going to do a lot of that better than you. But I think there will be new jobs that get created. For instance, and if I just take the SDLC life cycle to an ADLC life cycle, SDLC is the standard software development life cycle, and when I say ADLC, it's all around, AI development life cycle. The problem is very, very different. So in the SDLC world, you test a zillion times, you're expected to get the same result every time, right? But in the ADLC world, it's very different, right? So because models are hallucinating, models are drifting, there's a ton of things that are happening there, right? What does that really mean? I mean, test tools, environments, the way we build software, all of that, I think, is going to change. All our systems probably need to be modernized yet again, because in this new world, it's going to look very, very different. So personally, I mean, we're going through 2030 plans as well, and all of us are thinking about, resource reductions and things like that. But I'm not sure we absolutely got all of this right? Because I think it's going to be a new world, something that many of us have not probably seen. It could probably create a lot of new jobs, just like the computer age did. Yeah. So I feel very good about India and how it's placed as we kind of get into this, the new technology areas, whether it's quantum, AI, whatever else it is.
Yeah, and there's so much opportunity, because as you said, we are still in the beginning stages of seeing what this disruption actually looks like. And so there's still so much to learn, and the impact that all of us can have on that learning in that environment, we still need to make sure that we are represented in the systems that are created, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And there's so many opportunities for the language models to be continuously developed based on more of the global South in the conversation that hasn't been so far. And I think that's another opportunity. What would you say to that?
Absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with that, right? Because, we're trying to solve some problems, but then, there are places where we still, I think, don't understand. For instance, yes, we probably have, somebody generate more test cases better than us, probably generate a lot of those corner cases. Maybe we're looking at some of the front office jobs going away, potentially, where, you'd have an empathetic AI agent. But when companies have over-indexed on AI, and we've heard some early stories, and like you rightly said, it's still early days, right? When you overemphasized on AI, you realized it was probably not as empathetic as it should be, and then you're trying to get people back into doing some of that, right? So I think it's going to be a bit of a journey here, and I would believe, most of us, I think, are experimenting with AI today, and 2026 will probably be that year of experimentation across the board. We'll learn through mistakes. We'll, need to understand what this is. And 2027 is probably when we'll be geared up for maybe larger scale adoption of AI to solve some serious problems that we have, right, across the industry.
So what does that mean for leadership right now? Because leadership has to think differently than it has, as you've already given the example of the different development life cycles and the different challenges there. So what would you say to the leaders in the room?
Well, as far as all of us are concerned, I think the one big thing that we'll need to do is really upskill ourselves, right? To kind of be able to face and understand this new area of technology. I think it's always good. I mean, the Gen Zs. Like, for instance, we were talking about it. When we were in college, we were probably, 3 girls in a class of 60 boys that we had, right? Today, and we never learned computer programming in that sense. I mean, there was one computer, and I remember even as final year students, a lot of us would group up and go and try to do some bit of coding. And this was back in the days of BASIC and, Pascal and things like that. But time has changed now, right? So it's probably time for us to really learn from the new age kids, right, who kind of have it all. So what we're trying to do in our organization is pair up some of the younger guys who kind of really good with new technologies with the senior guys in the system. The reason that I think is important is really because, the older guys understand architectures, understand how the bank works, understand some of the core problems that there are, and these guys, the younger ones, come back with, ways to solve some of them. So that pairing, I think, is probably what we'll have to see. But it's really about upskill, and really be relevant to this new technology wave that's going to hit all of us.
And for the leaders to manage to the multi-generational staff that they will have, it's a different sort of management in this era of developing and the AI engines that work differently than they did in the past. And so that's some upskilling for us too as leaders. And we'll be talking about some of that more here at the conference.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think even a lot of that is still evolving, right? Where the guardrails for AI are still evolving. We're in the process of, as I said, really trying to understand, the drifts that happen in the system, the sort of hallucination that happens in the system. But for many of us, movie buffs, if you've seen Mission Impossible, the recent one, you can, you know what a good AI agent can do, but then there are the bad ones that can get anywhere and destroy as well. So I think it's really important for us to kind of get that really right before we get into mass or large scale deployment of AI.
Absolutely. So we're always talking about inclusion because we know that's really important to innovation and to success, not just for the people who do the work, but for the businesses and the communities that they serve. So what does inclusion look like now in this age of disruption?
Well, I've always said this, inclusion can be multiple, ways and sorts. I think Shreya called out some of them when she said, in this country, it's also about color, it's also about, religion and everything else. But when you talk about seats at the table, particularly, I think, it's really, really important that in companies like the ones that I work for, geographical inclusion is also important, apart from just gender representation. But on the gender piece now, and I've given this example many, many times, for industries that are particularly, like a bank or payment decision, where 75% of those decisions are influenced or made by women, I think it's really important for us to have inclusive design teams, inclusive tech teams where, girls are playing a major part. Now, the one problem that we really have in our industry is that typical S-curve that you see, right? So when we start, we have about 40+% representation of girls, in early careers. When it goes to a mid-career, you see that dropping to a 30-odd%. When it comes to senior levels, it's about 20-something. But when you go to the top executive positions, it's probably 5 or 6%, which means that you already have a pyramid. And that's where I think the guys are coming in, and it's that typical that curve that you have. So we really need to beat that, I think, and because it's so important to have girls on design teams as senior architects and systems driving solutions, because many of them, are for a target population that all of us are, right? And I keep saying this, whoever designed the interior of an automotive never thought of a place to put a handbag, because there was probably no gender representation there in that design team, because that's so true, right? You keep looking for where do I place my handbag. So I really think it's very, very important. But that's on design teams. But it's so important to have them at senior leadership positions as well, right? So to me, it has to be, a 50-50 tech equity, like you yourself called some time back, where it's representation at every level, including at the C-suite jobs. It's about no pay disparity. It's, you know, a ton of things that go with it, I think. So it has to be true inclusion in form and shape, right from the top to everything that we do. And it has to be total empowerment that we give the girls that are coming into the system.
It truly does. And, you know, back to the concept of being unbound, we also have some work to do in terms of giving ourselves the permission to have the impact that only we can have. There are ways of being, understanding, and lifestyle that only we understand, and they need to be there to impact the systems. I love your example of the car. There are so many other examples. Even they talk about the artificial heart doesn't fit inside of a woman's body because it wasn't designed for it. These are life-changing opportunities that we have to impact not only our communities, but the world. And so we have to take the concept of inclusion and understanding that our voice is meaningful, even when we feel like we aren't ready for it.
I agree. And in India, I think we're a country of stories, right? So you have a lot of stories that you hear from every part of the country. We've got a ton of stories of women, you know, who've kind of done something very, very different in that day and age, right? Rani Lakshmibai is one of those. But gone are those days where it used to be a solo journey, where it used to be just one trailblazer. I think today it is a little different, where all of us are expected to be more influencers, I guess, and really help more and more of our kind to kind of come into the industry and grow, as well as, you know, create these movements. All of us should, you know, be able to be movement starters, really. The Me Too movement was such a powerful thing, and it did happen. So it's for us to believe that each one of us can do that. Each one of us will have a fall, and that's inevitable, but we only have the courage to get back up and restart that journey. And I think each one of us here, if you're mothers and, you know, you always set yourselves a goal of wanting to be a 10 on 10 in everything. You want to be a 10 on 10 being a mother, you want to be 10 on 10 at work, you want to be 10 on 10, you know, as a wife, whatever. But I think it's okay to be a 5 on 10 on something or a 2 on 10 on something. You're not able to attend a PTM meeting for your kid, a parent-teacher meeting. It's probably okay. Don't beat yourself to death about wanting to do everything and be really, really successful in everything. But choose and understand what those priorities are and go after them. If there is a passion, and I tell this to every girl that meets me, never go to your grave thinking there was something I wanted to do and I couldn't. Please ensure you raise your hand if you think you are 60, 70% ready for a job. What most can happen? Somebody will tell you that you're not ready for the job and you may not get it. But then you go and upskill yourself and get back up there if you want that job so badly. Try for it one more time, and one more time, and one more time. And you will get to that point, you know, of fulfilling that ambition and burning desire that you have, if that is the fire in the belly that you have, you know. So don't kill that for anything, and don't compromise on whatever you like, you know, whatever that be, whatever that journey in life that you want to be. So that's my little learning from my many years of life. So I think that's something I'd love to share with all of you.
And I would say the same thing. Yeah, go ahead. And I'm going to challenge you to really walk in that. Because I remember when I was a young woman hearing similar words, but I don't know that I believed them, because so many other voices were coming at me, drowning those out. And so it's going to be up to you that when you hear those other voices to say, nope, not me. And you can just smile and say in your head, yeah, that's not me. Thank you, but no. I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. Because not only for you, we need you to do that. There are solutions that only you have from your experiences, from your resilience. And the world needs those. But if you listen to those other voices, we'll miss out. And so we really need you to do that for all of us. Can you try? Can you do that?
Oh, they absolutely can try.
Okay. I didn't hear anything. So, and I would say the same thing goes for entrepreneurs. So anybody in here want to raise your hand and say, I'm an entrepreneur, I've got an idea, I've got something I want to create? I know there's somebody. There's more than, okay, I see a few. We need you to do that thing. And one thing I always like to share is hard is not the point. Sometimes people say, well, that's just so hard. That's not the point. When we think about the women who've come before us, the people who've come before us, such that we can sit here and have this wonderful conversation and encourage each other, they did a hard thing. The namesake of this conference, she did a hard thing.
Yep.
And now it's our turn. And I encourage us to take that turn.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. How many of you know Ada Lovelace? A lot of you, right? She was the first woman, she was the first programmer, and she was a woman. So that to me is huge in terms of what all of us in this room can do.
Right.
And do you know when the first patent got granted to a woman? Back in the 1800s. So there have been a lot of people that have been doing, you know, truly breakthrough work and have been unbound for many, many years. And I think we have a lot of them to follow.
That's right. And so sometimes when people tell you you're the first, you're not. You have others' footsteps to fall, you have other footfalls to walk in.
Absolutely.
And you can do whatever comes to you to do. And we want to encourage you to do that. We also want to encourage you to find your people here. Find a friend, find 10, so that when you're going through that thing, you have somebody else to talk to. I would love to have had a Grace Hopper celebration back when I was a young technologist. Please take advantage of this community. It's here for you. Well, I think we're getting the hook, so I have one more question.
Sure.
We have to look forward to what's coming. And if you think about the year 2035, what's one bold aspiration that you would have for us?
Well, I think I called that out. You know, the 50-50% equity, which you talk about, I think is super important. And if we are able to get there, I think that'll be great. And this could be about, you know, funding for companies run by women entrepreneurs. Do they get that sort of funding like our male counterparts? Would be great. It's the same thing about C-suite roles. Do we have enough at those tables, enough representation? Because it's very important for us to role model people, I think. So if you see somebody there with a certain journey, and you see lots of these movements created where you say, oh, she's there, I can get there too at some point in time, right? And I think those really are important. And if we're able to, technology, I'm sure all of us will get there, right? Whether it's AI and all the benefits that AI can bring in, or quantum and what quantum can bring in. But I think the portion around tech equity that needs to be created is something that all of us together jointly need to make happen, right? Because that, I think, is the more difficult thing to kind of make organizations see and make the movement on. The movement's happening, but I think, albeit a little slowly, it's important for us to accelerate and get that to a point where you see a lot more women. And the reason is not just women in terms of, you know, women for representation's sake, right? But all of us have seen statistics where organizations run by women are probably a lot more stable. The ROI generated, and this is all data that's published, right, is a lot more. Probably we're not as risk-taking as our male counterparts, but then, well, there are a ton of other benefits we bring to the table, I believe.
Absolutely. And can everyone join me in thanking Sirisha for such an amazing sharing?
So there's just one story, if you don't mind, I'd end with. I know they're booting us, but I'll tell you this story, and then I'll probably, you know, we'll leave stage. So how many of you have seen baby elephants, right? Have all of you seen baby elephants in a zoo? And you see that baby elephant tied to a little rope to that little peg, and the elephant's moving forward and backward around that peg. The elephant grows. It's a full-blown elephant, huge, and you still see it tied to that little rope and a peg. And that huge elephant still moving forward and backward around that peg. what does it take for that huge elephant to actually break off from this, right? Not even a second. I think that's what all of us need to kind of realize. We've now grown, and there are no shackles that tie us to anything. Our growth and our path forward is something that we ourselves kind of drive and dictate. So that's the little story, and I think all of you are like these huge elephants with a huge journey in front of you. So please make the best use of it, and this community, I think you should really, really rely on it.
I love that story. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can just add one little line to that story. Little elephants, remember our theme is Unbound. So get rid of that peg, get rid of that rope that holds you back. Thank you so much to Sirisha and Brenda.